Hello and welcome to PFF Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host, Ian Hartitz. Happy Thursday. I hope you guys are getting ready for an eventful week 3. Been a great first 2 weeks of the season. Yada, yada, yada. Whatever, people. You are here for one reason and one reason only, and that is because I have brought to you another fantastic guest here on the PFF Fantasy Football Podcast. He does NFL, fantasy, and draft content over at The Ringer, the voice of the Ringer Fantasy Football Show and creator of the critically acclaimed Ringer NFL Draft Guide. None other than Danny Kelly on Twitter at Danny B. Kelly. Danny, I think this is your third time on the pod, man. Thank you for helping out a small timer like myself, and it's great to talk again, brother.
Absolutely. I love the work that you do. I consume every little bit of it, and so I really appreciate you having me on the show. Yeah.
Absolutely, man. The feeling is mutual. Again, people, I cannot speak highly enough about the work Danny does, particularly in the offseason, man. Like, I feel it's a grind to try to get through 16 games a week, but to tackle college football, man, like, what the hell?
Yeah. I always feel really far behind by the time college football, or by the time the draft starts rolling around, because I'm having to catch up because I'm doing NFL stuff hard during the season. But now this year, I'm trying to get ahead. I'm really going to do it this time. I've already watched some of the quarterbacks. I'm kind of just getting into it. But yeah, it's definitely like very difficult to kind of catch up with everything. Like by the time November rolls around.
I'm just not sure, like, if there's a possible way for someone to have a loving family and also consume college football and NFL at the same time. I don't know, Danny, but
I think that's fair.
I think you do it closer than just about anyone. So we'll kick things off. And again, I just can't say enough good things about the Ringer's draft guide, but pretty much consensus, big 5 rookie QBs coming into this year. They've largely disappointed, at least from a fantasy perspective. I think Mac Jones has probably played the best in real life, but between Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson, Trey Lance, Justin Fields, it's either been they can't get on the field or it's been more bad than good. So rest of the season outlook, Danny, who would you rank? How would you rank these guys in terms of who you want on the fantasy squad?
So I think I'm going Fields, actually, just assuming that he grabs the reins, grabs his job, kind of holds off Andy Dalton, because I think, Nagy said today that once Dalton's healthy, the starting job is his, which I think is it's really just him. And I think actually, I hate that he says that, but it also does make sense from his point of view, because if Fields stumbles terribly and is like a 4-pick game, like we saw from Zach Wilson last week, he would say, oh, well, this was already our plan, instead of having to bench him and then have to listen to all these discussions from like the media and everything.
That's fair.
So I think he's just kind of giving himself, it's covering his own ass, which I think it makes a lot of sense. It's actually also covering for Fields in case he totally sucks. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think he's going to show enough. I mean, we saw last week, he came in cold off the bench. He threw what should have been a touchdown pass to Allen Robinson. He made a couple really nice plays. He was getting away and getting out of the pocket, avoiding the rush. That's going to be a big deal, I think, for this offensive line that just doesn't protect very well. He's obviously got to do a better job of protecting himself, not getting his head taken off on a free blitzer or whatever. But I think I'm sticking with Fields just based on my evaluation of him before the season. I think he's, obviously a starter now. I don't know what the deal with Lance is going to be going forward. Jimmy G has played poorly enough at times. I think that Lance could be coming at some point, but I just don't know when. And then with Lawrence, I think Lawrence would be my number 2 guy on this list, because he's number 1. He's a starter already. We know that's happening. We can plug him into our lineups and all that stuff. They're going to be passing a lot. I think they're going to be playing from behind every week. And I think, he's been aggressive downfield. He's been mostly pretty good. I know that he's made a few bad decisions here and there, but I think like the traits, you can see the traits and you can see the potential. And I think he's going to have the opportunity to get into some shootouts and or at least play with, the type of game script you want where you're passing a lot and all that stuff. So I think it would go Fields, Lawrence, Lance, then Mac Jones, just because I think they're low volume, not going to be asking him to do too much. And then Wilson, for me, is just like a team situation, just not super confident with what the Jets are doing. And then we're going to have these floor games that we saw last week where, he can really just kind of collapse. So I think that would be my order. Where do you got him?
I think you pretty much nailed it, man. The hope with Wilson, I think, as we got deeper into the offseason was that we could have someone provide a little bit of a rushing floor with potential for these big, similar to Lawrence, like the negative game script and just racking up the yards. Yeah. And I don't want to write him off yet because he faced a Panthers defense that I think, along with the Raiders, probably the most surprisingly good defenses so far. Then Belichick, and now it's going to go terrible in Denver this week as well. So I want to see him against the Titans and Falcons before fully writing him off. But the fact that we're not even getting like a rushing floor with him, I think it does put him and Mac Jones in that deeper tier. With Fields, I'm happy you brought up the Allen Robinson drop. He had another dime down the sideline that Darnell Mooney couldn't come down with. And I think at this point, he needs to be the number one. So before the year, I think I had Lance over Fields just because, I mean, I remember our PFF draft guide comp for Trey Lance was Taysom Hill with actual arm talent. So I still think like if he can work out a little bit, I still think he has the highest ceiling in terms of it. But we got to be realistic with how the starting, process is looking. And as I agree, not great as Jimmy G has looked. He is winning football games, and who the hell knows what's going on in Kyle Shanahan's mind.
Honestly, that's the biggest tiebreaker for me is just I am annoyed, frankly, with like what Shanahan's doing. I don't want to trust him. I don't want to have his decision making and his process. I'm calling it the Shanahan tree of motivation. It's because it's bleeding over into the Jets apparently with like this Denzel Mims situation.
Oh my God.
And so I'm just like, I don't want to have anything to do with that. I don't want to have to stress about what Kyle Shanahan is doing in any given week with his quarterbacks or with anybody, with his running backs, all that stuff, like the surprise sermon inactive, all that stuff. I'm just like, and Ayuk, I don't want to deal with it. So that's another reason I'm out with Lance. The Shanahan thing is like just annoying.
I appreciate him really enabling Deebo Samuel to some great heights. And I think that's the only nice thing I can say so far. So he's winning football games. He's doing his job. But for us fantasy people out here, pretty freaking annoying. And,
totally.
Real quick, Danny, I sent out this tweet that I just want to know if you're similar on the same page. These are the quarterbacks I would start over Justin Fields this week ahead of his matchup against the Browns. Kyler, Mahomes, Lamar, Jalen Hurts, Russ, Josh Allen, Dak, Brady, Herbert, and Aaron Rodgers. That's it. I think he's in the tier with Stafford, maybe Daniel Jones in the spot. Derek Carr's earned that way up. But do you think that's about right for Fields, that QB 11 to kind of QB 13, 14 range?
Yeah. And I'd probably be more aggressive than most people. And I think maybe you're in the same camp. It's just like the rushing floor, I think, is so key. And it was like, look at what Jalen Hurts did last year in his limited action. He wasn't passing well. He was like the worst passer in the NFL, but he was still like a top 5 option in fantasy because he's such a good runner. And I think that's the dynamic you get with Fields. And it's even probably better, honestly, that his offensive line is terrible because it's gonna mean he's bailing from the pocket and running a lot. Yeah. So from a fantasy point of view, I'm excited about Fields. I don't want him to struggle as a passer, obviously, because I want him to have a good long career and all that. And I don't want it to like snowball on him. Kind of like we saw with Zach Wilson this week. It just snowballed and it wasn't good. He got out of like his headspace that I think he needed to be in and just started forcing stuff. I don't want to see that with Fields. So obviously I'm rooting for him to be an efficient passer, but I think odds are, he's going to have to bail out of the pocket, run around. They're facing Cleveland this week, right? Yeah. That's not an easy defense. No. And so, but I still think just the upside and the floor that he gives you with the rushing plus the upside as a passer. I think he's a really good passer. Yeah. Like you said, the Allen Robinson pass was right on the money. Should have been a touchdown. I think his receivers are going to bail him out a lot more this next game. And so, I'm definitely like aggressive with Fields going forward.
Jalen Hurts was horrific as a passer last year. Taysom Hill, you could argue, was even worse, at least aesthetically. And both guys, like you said, QB1. So that's all we're pretty much doing here by going on a limb with Justin Fields. Let's switch over to the rookie running back scene. Also, not all that great. Obviously, ETN suffers the preseason injury. That sucks. We got Najee getting fed. He's on top of all the snap rate, leaderboards. Found his way into the end zone last week and had that nasty stiff arm. So he's doing good things. But after him, Trey Sermon, Javonte Williams, Michael Carter, all relatively underwhelming, at least compared to their ADP. So putting Najee aside, I think everyone knows that he's locked into your starting lineups. Which rookie RB excites you the most here moving forward?
I think it's Javonte Williams. And I wouldn't necessarily say like starting this week, I'm super excited about putting him in my lineup. But I think if you're talking about rest of season rankings, I would probably have Javonte easily at number one, because I think number one, he's showing out. He's looked really good. He's breaking a lot of tackles. I think they're utilizing him maybe more than I expected, not quite as much as I was hoping, but more than I expected in the passing game. Obviously, I think Melvin Gordon is sort of like the wily old veteran that they're going to use in the passing game. But overall, he looks as advertised on the field. They're going to continue to use him, I think. And then this offense just generally has a higher floor and a higher ceiling than I thought it would coming into the year. Like Teddy Bridgewater has been really good. Yeah. That's maybe one of the top storylines of the first couple of games, is that Bridgewater looks really aggressive. Like he's pushing the ball down the field. I think I saw his ADOT. This is me taking something I saw on Twitter out of context, but it's like his ADOT is like right up there with Russell Wilson. It's like he's pushing the ball down the field. Yeah,
he's fifth in the league.
So that's very encouraging. You know, the receivers are showing out. They got all these weapons on offense. And I think that's only going to help. It's like rising tides raises all ships. So, you know, right now it's definitely a split, and he's maybe like slightly behind Melvin Gordon technically in like usage and everything, but I think that's going to change going forward. So I'd say Javonte number one. I'm kind of intrigued with Carter going forward, to be honest, because he started to pick up things. Like he started to add more snaps, add more carries. He's being used in the passing game. They're going to have negative game script most likely for the rest of the season. So maybe that translates into a bunch of targets for him. I generally don't get excited about like the running game for the Jets, just in general, you know, like, but the fact that it's a two-headed monster, you know, I think you preach this all the time. It's two people, not three, and we can deal with two people. And so with him and Ty Johnson, I think eventually his talent will probably show out. He's going to surpass Johnson, and more importantly, he's going to be used in the passing game. So I think Carter is good. And then with Sermon, I'm just like, he's sitting on my bench. At this point, I can't drop him. It's like, maybe that's just, you know, me holding on to like the draft thing. Like they traded up in the draft to get him, blah, blah, blah. But I'm not putting him in my lineup until something is more clear here. So he's the guy I'm probably least excited about.
I stare so long at Trey Sermon, just like, okay.
Should I do it? Should I drop him?
Oh my gosh, man. It's so rough. It's, you know, this 49ers backfield, the amount of time we spent with Mostert versus Sermon, and for that to just be so irrelevant. Oh man, pain. Nothing else to say, but
it's like, this is exactly what we talked about all off season. How we hate this. Like, we don't want to have to deal with it. And it's worse. It's actually worse than we thought it would be. Freaking Elijah Mitchell.
Week 3, Danny. We got a long season ahead of us. The only thing I would add, I thought great points. Michael Carter, especially, man. Like last week, I thought he really flashed some good ability. I know we're in it for the volume, but it helps if the guy, like, you know, is an actual good football player as well, which certainly he seems to be getting there. I just wouldn't be, especially like Javonte and Carter, if you got these guys, you know, don't be cutting ties now. The fact that they are already in 2 RB backfields. I mean, look at the landscape last year. Obviously, Clyde Edwards-Helaire had the starting job from day one, but he needed Damian Williams to opt out to even get that. All the other guys, Swift, Jonathan Taylor, Cam Akers, J.K. Dobbins, Antonio Gibson, they all had similar early season problems. It just takes rookie running backs a little bit of a time to get there. So love what you said about Javonte, and you know, it's crazy how young he is in terms of he'll be younger in week 1 next year than Najee Harris is right now. Gordon will be out of the picture. Like Javonte is someone I think people should be loving, especially in Dynasty. I mean, for him to be number 2 right now in forced broken tackles per rush, only behind Nick Chubb, pretty good company to find yourself in. So now let's talk about some rookie receivers, and specifically Rondale Moore. He looks great, Danny. I know he had the 77-yard blown coverage touchdown, but like even before the half, Cliff was just like, hey, we got 20 seconds. Let's get Rondale the ball in open space, see what happens. Good things happen. Unfortunately, though, A.J. Green's soaking up way too many targets. We got freaking Christian Kirk up there actually playing ahead of Moore from a snap perspective. Do you see Moore's talent winning out and him becoming a consistent high-ish end fantasy guy this year, or there's too many mouths to feed in Arizona?
So number one, they're playing, I want to say them and the Bills are playing the most 4 receiver sets in the NFL so far.
I believe you're right. Yeah.
But that being said, it's still like 40 or 50% at the most. Like it's not like a ton. It's not like that's their primary thing. So yes, he's only playing about half the snaps ish. So far, Rondale Moore is. But again, I think it's exactly what you said with the running back too, is like I think they're probably bringing him on a little bit slowly. They don't want to put too much on his plate. I know coaches are cognizant of like the the rookie wall. And so, maybe they're just trying to use these veterans, get him acclimated, all that stuff. But honestly, unless they're idiots, which is possible, but like, look at him, look at the dynamic he brings to the offense. I think that he's basically forcing this coaching staff to be like, hey, we're going to use you more because every time you get the ball, something good happens, right? Something dynamic happens to our offense. And so, you mentioned the one before the half. I can't remember off the top of my head because I was watching that game live, but he like cut in, out, and like got to the sideline and put him in position, I think, to get a field goal or at least an attempt. So it's like, yeah, they are getting something from him. I think they wanted to get from Andy Isabella. And, he's just already proving that he deserves to get more opportunities. He got more opportunities last week than he got in week 1. I think it's going to continue to build. Now, does that mean he's maybe rotating with Christian Kirk going forward? That could happen. Like Kirk is, for as much as I want him to break out and be the guy that like I think everyone wanted him to be early on his career, I still think I would rather have Rondale Moore getting those targets than Christian Kirk. So, it's tough because I'm on one hand, it's like you're depending on Cliff Kingsbury not being a donkey. And I don't know if I want to put all my chips into that, like put all my chips in on that. But like at the same time, I don't see how they can't give him more targets and give him more opportunity going forward. So I'm very bullish on Moore. I was like on the pod yesterday on the Ringer NFL or the Ringer Fantasy Football pod yesterday, I was just like probably going a little bit overboard on Rondale. Honestly, I'm like, he's going to be a wide receiver 2 this year. And then I was like looking at like who he'd have to be over. I'm like, okay, let's be real. Like maybe wide receiver 3 is probably like a better guess, but like, I really just think the talent's there. And this is a good offense. Like Kyler's looking great. They're passing a lot. They're running a lot of plays. They're running fast, all that stuff. So I just am really excited about Rondale Moore.
I think wide receiver 3 as a ceiling is very fair. It does just matter what Cliff is going to do. And, I spam that Jason Garrett train picture on Twitter all the time talking about.
It's my favorite bit, by the way. I'm not even kidding. Makes me laugh every time.
I'm going to get that framed from my office here very soon. I cannot wait. So any bad Giants decision, I'm always spamming that. I think we need to start looking at the Kingsbury, sitting there with his feet up in the living room. We got to start treating that the same way. If he can not get Rondale the touches that he deserves, man, it's going to be rough. But yeah, with him and Javonte, like you would just hope that when they're playing this well, more opportunity will come. You would like to think, because this year, only 4 wide receivers are averaging at least 4 yards per route run. Now, 3 is incredible. It's basically only Julio Jones, and I think maybe Kittle got there over the last 5 years. But the only 4, over 4 at this point, Deebo Samuel, Rondale Moore, Cooper Kupp, and Tyler Lockett. So it'll regress a little bit, but he is doing everything right.
That's kind of interesting.
Football in 2021, Danny. You don't need to worry about it anymore.
Yeah.
All these soccer kids that couldn't make it in the 90s are now playing football. I don't know. Okay, so moving on to another Moore. That was everyone's offseason darling, Elijah Moore. He was better in week 2. It's just tough to stand out when this offense has scored, checks notes, 20 points through 2 weeks. Talked about Zach Wilson, some of the concerns about the overall environment. We got Jamison Crowder coming back. Jeff Smith is getting legit run in these games, Danny. Like there's 5 or 6 receivers potentially. You mentioned, Denzel Mims is in the doghouse even after a week where he allegedly had great practices. A lot of mouths in New York, not a high ceiling for the offense. Do you think Elijah finds a way to break through anyway? Because look, man, I really respect what, you have to say, a lot of other minds in the industry, but like when I see AJ Brown, my guy AJB coming out and saying Elijah Moore is going to be the next Jerry Rice or whatever, like that matters to me. Yeah.
And, I wasn't at these Jets training camp practices, but the way that the media was talking about him, and typically, look, it's the Jets. Like the media, I think, has been conditioned over the last 10, 15 years to be really negative and like not believe things. And they're saying he looks incredible. Like, I can't remember who said it.
I think it was Connor Hughes. Yeah.
He was just like, I every day I come into training camp, I try to talk about somebody else, and it's just Elijah Moore. He's just making plays everywhere. I tend to like think that stuff matters because players are players, and I loved Elijah Moore even before I said that. So it's great to confirm your priors. That being said, like I'm still pretty like trying to like temper my enthusiasm, I think, going forward with Elijah Moore. You nailed it. Like all this stuff about the ceiling of the offense, all that stuff. I think in PPR and half PPR though, I mean, why can't he just do what Braxton Berrios has done in the first 2 weeks? Like Berrios has like a 30% target share.
It's ridiculous.
And so he's going to be useful. I think that you give those to Elijah Moore, start giving more of those targets to Elijah Moore, maybe have him play that role. And to be honest with you, I haven't rewatched the Jets game from this last week yet, but I don't see why he can't be like a PPR monster and just like hoover up a bunch of targets. So I do think he has the ability to be really useful going forward, maybe even starting this week, but like at least during the second half of the season. I don't think the Jets have any real, commitment to Jamison Crowder. I know he's pissed off because they made him inactive this last week, even though he was healthy. Like, I just don't think they care, honestly, at this point. It's like the Shanahan thing. It's like, Robert Saleh comes from the Shanahan tree now, and he's like, whatever we got to do to motivate these guys. I don't know what their plan is here, but like Mims is in the doghouse. Like they don't care about Jamison Crowder. It's all about Vincent Smith and Jeff Smith or whoever else they got going on. But yeah, no, bottom line, we saw his routes go, or his target rate go up this last week. Even in week one, if he would have caught that pass like a 50-yard down the field, like we'd probably be a lot more excited about Elijah Moore right now than we are. He's just kind of flying under the radar. So bottom line, yes, I'm still bullish. I think he has that like flex appeal going forward, maybe even higher than that, just because I think number one, he's going to have good like rapport with Wilson from training camp and all that stuff. And I think they can maybe like design things. Honestly, I thought he was going to be like the Debo of this offense. Like the way that the 49ers are using Debo, I thought that was going to be Elijah Moore this year. So I'm still kind of hopeful for that.
Yeah, he's getting a lot more air yards than I was kind of anticipating for sure.
Yeah.
It's just so hard to try to find this balance sometimes between someone like Elijah, where, hey, his best case scenario is he becomes Zach Wilson's number one receiver sooner rather than later, versus a Rondale who has shown us more. He's in a better offense and probably has the higher floor. But I would just say, people, I'm sure that Elijah's going to be on waiver wires after. It's probably going to be another disappointing week 3. So before those Titans and Falcon matchups, try to find a way to get this dude on the bench. And, it's tough because there are so many mouths to feed. He was the number one guy in snaps last week. I think at a minimum, we can feel better about Elijah and Corey Davis compared to the rest of these jabronis.
Yes, for sure. I'm still holding.
Yeah. Amen to that. Okay, now we got our big 3 rookie receivers. Jamar Chase, DeVonta Smith, Jalen Waddle, all flashed to various extents throughout the first 2 weeks. Chase in particular might very well be the number one candidate for Rookie of the Year right now. Would you still rank these guys as Chase, Smith, Waddle, though? Because we have seen, in terms of just overall kind of target share domination, pure volume, I think DeVonta Smith might have the edge.
Yeah. So I thought about this a lot. It's tough. It definitely between Jamar and Smith. It comes down to those two guys. And this is a total fence sitting situation, but I think that DeVonta Smith is probably going to have a more reliable floor output like every week. Like, I know that he didn't do very much last week, but like going forward, I'm guessing you can like pretty much bank on him having like eight points in PPR like every week, just because he's got like a 30% target share in this offense. And it's like, he's going to be the guy that Jalen Hurts looks to. Plus he's really good. With Jamar, I think he's going to be more frustrating. He's going to have higher highs and then also probably some duds here and there, just based on the way that the Bengals offense has looked to me over the last couple of weeks. He's a little bit dependent, I think, on the big play versus like being like a check down guy or whatever, like in the short and intermediate area. Like, he's a big play target for them. And so, yeah, I would say I probably still would have Jamar ranked slightly higher than Smith, just on the fact that the Eagles offense is probably going to be lower volume, although the Bengals are like disappointingly low volume and slow this year so far. But I just think overall there's probably more opportunity in that offense, in the Bengals offense, than it is in the Eagles offense. So I would have Jamar ranked slightly higher, but I think Smith is still a very good option. And I think he's going to have a pretty good weekly floor just based on his target share and the fact that he's really good at getting open.
Yeah, at a minimum, maybe just the pre-draft or pre-season ADP disparity, a little bit too wide between Chase and Smith. I just hope the Bengals start letting Burrow throw a little bit more, man. He hasn't clipped over 30 attempts in a game yet, and he was getting that every single week last year. And it's not exactly keeping him like more upright, dude. He's taken 9 sacks over these 2 weeks. Like, I don't know that run pass is necessarily helping this guy avoid these hits. So ultimately, Higgins has 15 targets. Boyd has 13. Chase has 11. I couldn't go a day in the summer without tweeting about Tyler Boyd being undervalued. I still think he'll be a quality upside wide receiver 3 more weeks than not. We just need the volume to get there.
Yeah, you said it. I mean, I think you're totally right too. Like, the the run pass thing, just it doesn't actually help a quarterback, because now you're in 3rd and 8 and they know you're going to pass, and then they're just pinning their ears back and trying to get at you. So I don't know, like this is like getting too deep into the weeds on like what coaches are going to decide to do, but hopefully they come to their senses a little bit.
Zach Taylor, man, just needs more time. Just needs more time to get his system in.
Is there any positive? Are we feeling? Is there anything to be positive about with Zach Taylor so far out of like the last 2 years plus?
I don't think I can name a single thing, man. The fact too, like 2019 was a complete train wreck, but they got Burrow, so we all gave him a pass. And okay, they had that one random like shootout Ryan Finley one in week 16 last year. But the fact that this offense has just looked like unwatchable every time without Burrow, I can't think of. Can you think of a good thing to say?
I mean, no, not big picture.
My goodness. Okay, we'll leave Zach alone here for a second. Shift to some of the key matchups for this week. Your Seahawks, my goodness, man, looking like a shootout here with the Vikings, highest game total of the week. I think they might be tied with Tampa Bay, Los Angeles at this point. Either way, expecting all sorts of points. What are your initial impressions of the Shane Waldron-led Seahawks offense? Because, I would just say overall, if you looked at last year, the Seahawks and the Steelers were these teams that were amazing in the first half, really struggled in the second half. At least Seattle is back to balling out. Can't say the same about Pittsburgh, but let's focus on, your initial takeaways from this slightly new look Seahawks offense.
So it's tough because in week 1, they were very different than they looked in week 2. So I don't know. Like, honestly, I can't figure it out yet. I think we have to wait a little bit longer and make a decision based on like more like a bigger sample, what Shane Waldron brings. Week 1, it was the Rams offense. Like that's what we saw. He brought the Rams offense over from LA. It was awesome. I made a little cut up that people kind of picked up, and it was like all the pre-snap motion, all the misdirection, all the deception that we saw, all the stuff us nerds have been begging them for. And they were doing it. And so I was just like on cloud 9. They looked really good week 1. And then in the first half of this last game, obviously they made some huge plays. But it was a different look. It looked like the old Seahawks, where they're not doing pre-snap motion. They're not doing quite as much play action or anything like that. Like trying to get the defense moving in one direction, then going the other way. Like they weren't doing that. I don't know why. Like I can't explain what happened. Like I like to give play callers a benefit of the doubt, because I think it's a very difficult job, and a lot of the times game situations dictate a lot of what you have to do. However, I just don't understand why they went away from that. Maybe it has to do with the fact that D. Eskridge was hurt, but that seems like a really terrible plan if you're coming into the season relying on this like 3rd round rookie to be like your savior, or 2nd round rookie or whatever. So the bottom line is I was very encouraged after week 1. I'm still encouraged, and I'm still bullish on this offense because they have Russell Wilson, and because generally speaking, like Lockett's awesome, DK Metcalf's awesome, Chris Carson's awesome. They find a way typically to kind of like clean up these things. But, the week 2 kind of collapse in the second half of this last game against Titans felt very familiar. And so, I'm just like kind of holding off judgment too much right now, just because it was like the Seahawks last year, basically in week 2, whereas week 1 was awesome.
Yeah, like I don't want to criticize too hard. They scored 30 points last week. That should be enough to get a win more times than not. But it was funny. Like we were on our, NFL pregame show last Sunday before that started. And I think Eric Eager brought up the point, like, they just really beat the Colts in week 1. It was this normal game. They got up a lot and they went ahead. And it reminded me of your colleague Kevin Clark's so famous tweet about the Seahawks never having played a normal football game. And they got back to not playing normal football games in week 2.
It's like teams have a DNA, Ian, and the Seahawks are having a hard time escaping that. It's like every game is weird. That Colts game was the weirdest game because it was not weird. It was like, this doesn't feel like the Seahawks. What is going on here? Is this like what happened? But it's back to normal, so it's all good.
I love that DNA. Weirdest game the Seahawks have had was the one that was actually normal. All right, moving on. Moving on from the Seahawks here. We got the Falcons and the Giants, man. This feels to me like the WWE. I think your boss, Bill Simmons, has said this over the years, but it's like a loser leaves town sort of match. I mean, both teams 0-2. The Giants, I do think, have looked better than the Falcons. Do you agree with that, where the Giants might have the best chance of emerging as a decent team moving forward, or are you not ready to give up on Matt Ryan and company?
No, I'm actually kind of glad you framed it this way, because I thought it was going to be sort of hot takey to say the Giants look better to me. Okay. Even though the Garrett point stands, that's like, it's always on the table. We have to always have that in our mind. Jason Garrett sticking his head out the train. But Daniel Jones honestly had a really good game, I thought, last week. The fact that they're using him as a read option guy and like getting out there and letting like stressing defenses and making it harder on defenses, like that's positive. That's a good thing. I think that Saquon Barkley is going to continue to get better as the year goes on. I think they are easing him in. I think that Galladay is going to continue to get better. Obviously, it's a really tough start for him, but it's good to see. Honestly, I thought it was good that he was yelling on the sideline. I don't know who he was yelling at, but like it's good to see that he's like mentally in it, because there was some like defeatism or something. Like he was like, we're going to start out slow, man. Like I think he said that in the preseason.
That quote was hilarious.
Yeah. It's like, man, come on, like at least pretend that you're excited, but like, it's good to see he's like, still sort of got that like alpha mentality where he wants the ball and he wants to like kick ass and all that stuff. And so I thought that was good to see actually. And I still think he's a baller. And so I think, eventually the pieces on this offense are going to come together it's going to look better than we thought, or that it was in the first couple of weeks. Ingram's going to be back. I think Sterling Shepard has been really exciting so far. So like overall, I'm much more excited about the potential, I guess, the ceiling for this offense. I think the Falcons have some really good weapons too, clearly, but yeah. Matt Ryan, his arm is definitely concerning. The overall talent of the offense outside of Pitts and Ridley is very concerning to me. Cordarrelle Patterson, great to see.
Thank you.
It's great to see, but I mean, I don't know if it's necessarily going to change the outlook for their team going forward. I don't know if any running back really does, to be honest. So, I generally would say the Giants, plus the Giants defense, I think is better. So, neither of these teams I'm super excited about, but I really want Daniel Jones to have a good year, I guess. And so hopefully that happens.
Right now, PFF's second highest graded passer. And the big thing with Jones, yeah, man, he is actually playing well. That game he had last week was our second highest graded single game performance of the year so far.
Nice.
It's 2 weeks. We're not saying he is now this incredible world beater, but similar to preseason, like I'd rather the guy play well than not play well, and we have to try to make excuses for him. Right. Crazy take there, I know, but I guess the one really encouraging thing, and you mentioned this earlier about Teddy Bridgewater having the increased average target depth. Like the top four, we got Russ, Brady, Lawrence, and Josh over 10 yards. And then Teddy, Zach Wilson, who that's his style play, which I appreciate. Yep. And then Daniel Jones. Last year, Daniel Jones was one of the best deep ball passers. He just didn't throw deep very often, so we didn't get this explosive Giants offense. So hopefully Jones can keep this up. As you said, it's like alarming every single time he gets the read option game going, even though he's now been doing it consistently for the last year and a half. And also, the defense, man. I think Howard and Byron in Miami are the best cornerback duo in the league. Bradbury and Adoree, I think, need to at least be in that, next tier conversation. I know Terry McLaurin got the best of Bradbury last week, but you got to be pretty damn good to have your coach say, hey, go line up across from Terry McLaurin all game. So I like to give the shadow guys a little bit of a break there.
It's also like, honestly, what corners don't get beat? There's like no corner. It's so hard to play defense these days. Like all the rules are basically against you. And obviously I think the NFL wants scoring. So it's just very difficult to be like a lockdown corner in the modern NFL. So yeah, definitely props to them.
Every cornerback other than Jalen Ramsey objectively sucks.
Seriously. Yeah.
Speaking of the best corner in the league, Buccaneers at Rams, essentially a battle for top dog in the NFC. Looking at their roster construction, man, it's just kind of wild the difference they have. Like the Rams might have the single best, like top 5, top 6 players in the league. But then, like, I think it was, maybe it was Mina Kimes and Steven Ruiz or something. I remember they had some preseason pod where they were trying to find like a hole in the Buccaneers roster, and the best they could come up with was like cornerback depth. Like that's how loaded this team is. But just looking at the NFC as a whole, do you consider the Rams Bucs as the top 2 teams in the NFC right now, or is there another squad that you think can get in there? Okay,
I've got them 1-2 actually in my power rankings after this week. So. And I think number 2 is hard to figure out, honestly. So like number 1 is clearly in my mind, the Buccaneers. They're sort of head and shoulders above everybody else. They're deep, they're balanced. They have basically everything you want. Like the worst position group on their roster in my mind is running back, which, is fine. Like they can get away with that. So yeah, I would say the Buccaneers to me are clearly the number 1 team. Brady looks awesome. Gronk looks like he's like from 5 years ago. Antonio Brown's still looking really good. And plus they have all that talent on defense. So I would say that. And then for me, doing number 2, no team really felt right in the number 2 spot. Like, you could put the Browns there, you could put the Rams there, maybe get frisky and put like the Ravens there because they just beat the Chiefs, whatever. The Chiefs could be there still because you still believe in Patrick Mahomes. So it's tough. But I put the Rams there ultimately just because I just think I'm still very bullish on like what Stafford can do for the ceiling of this team and, like open up their offense and really make it, run to the point where they don't need to have an elite defense. And they have like the star power on defense to like make big plays, make game changing plays. Turnovers and all that stuff, but they're probably not going to be like leading the NFL in points allowed and things like that. So,
right.
But yeah, I would say those are the top two teams. And then you throw in teams like, the Bills, Ravens, Chiefs, Browns, and I'm probably forgetting a few, maybe like throwing the 49ers there, though I haven't been quite as impressed with the 49ers as I thought I would be so far, but that's obviously just, quarterback play has a big part of that. So yeah.
Yeah, and we got the Panthers sitting there, but no one's quite buying this yet.
Yeah.
Hey, credit to their defense. I just want to see Darnold do this against not the Jets and not a Saints D missing 5 starters.
Also, when he's not in the lead, he hasn't played a snap, I think, without a lead or a tie or a lead. So he hasn't played from behind at all this year so far. So that could change things. We'll see.
He is playing good. Let's just save the victory laps, people. Yeah. I like when he plays good. I want there to be 32 good quarterbacks in the NFL. Lord knows that makes it more watchable. But yeah, everyone can go check out your power rankings over at theringer.com. It kind of leads us into our next question here. You have the Buccaneers and the Rams at 1-2, and I think that's fair. And there's no other, NFC team in your top shelf rankings. The AFC, man, is I think far more spread out. We know Mahomes is that ace spades that the Chiefs can always pull out. But I feel like maybe the 2021 Chiefs might not be quite as head and shoulders above the rest of the competition as we saw in 2019 and 2020.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think, when you have Mahomes, Kelsey, and Tyreek Hill, you can beat anybody in any game. And it's like this is a terrible analogy. Like it's like a plane crash. A lot of things have to go wrong for any plane to crash. Like this is like the Chiefs, you know what I mean? Like
you got dark there, Danny.
Sorry. I know that's just terrible. I was like, I regret this immediately. But like, it's like one of those things where they have built in just like safety measures, redundancy, because they have such an elite quarterback and an elite skill group, in Kelsey and Hill. They can just do so many different things. And then obviously having a few big time playmakers on defense, it's kind of like the Rams where, the leaders of the group are good enough to like create these game changing plays. They're probably going to give up a lot of yards, probably going to give up more points than you want to give up, but they can create these turnovers. They can create these game changing plays in crunch time in the most crucial situations. And that like gives them this boost. But at the same time, they don't look indestructible to me clearly, since the Ravens who in my mind are a pretty flawed team and very, very injured, still went in and beat beat the Chiefs. And obviously Lamar Jackson had a great game and all that stuff, but the run defense is suspect. They couldn't get off the field when they needed to, things like that. So they're maybe not quite as just inevitable is the word I always use, that as they have been in the past. But again, it's Mahomes. And so, it wouldn't surprise me if they're back at number 2 or 1, whatever, after this week. Some weird stuff happens in the NFL every week. So I still think that they're, probably the quote team to beat in the AFC.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see if the Bills can rebound sooner rather than later. I'm not sounding the panic alarms just yet. Haven't quite seen the world beater version of Josh Allen yet. And then with the Browns, I think if you just took away the team's names and only showed some of the rosters, other than quarterback, I think we're probably saying the Browns have the best overall roster.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, they're deep on both. They're kind of like the Buccaneers, but Brady and obviously Baker are not on the same level. So, but the Browns are interesting because, they can run the ball and they can do so many different things to you on offense. Like, they have more than one way to beat you. And if one thing isn't working, they can go the other thing, blah, blah, blah. It's like, that's nice to have that built in, kind of like backup plan. If one thing's not working, if Baker gets hurt, like he did in this last game, they can still keep going. And because they've got Nick Chubb, who can just annihilate any defense. And so, and they've got weapons on defense. Like, man, their pass rush is looking good. And obviously I think I almost call him Jason Garrett. Myles Garrett is, an elite pass rusher, getting Jadeveon Clowney in there. I don't know. They're one of those teams. I think you're right, though. It's like the Cleveland Brown, the aura around the Browns is still kind of like changing the narrative, holding back the narrative from being like super hyped about them, but they're really good.
Another team that I think their former narrative has been causing some of the public to be a little bit slow to get behind him. The Las Vegas Raiders. We got our John Gruden website saying all the money they wasted on it, yada, yada, yada. But hey, man, Carr is out here playing awesome. Darren Waller's a stud. The defense is rising up. Max Crosby, should be on the top of any sort of defensive player of the year. Not saying he's better than Donald. He's just having a very good year. Chill out, everyone. But I wanted to focus on Bryan Edwards and Henry Ruggs in particular because, hey, if Carr's going to keep throwing for over 300 yards, Waller can't catch them all. I remember we talked last August before the year. We were both very high on Henry Ruggs. Obviously, it didn't go great in 2020. But Danny, Bryan Edwards or Henry Ruggs, which one of these guys are you feeling the best about in fantasy moving forward?
I'm feeling better about Ruggs right now, and I like both of them, honestly. Like I'm excited about the potential that both bring, and I'm excited to see that Ruggs is kind of showing out this year because I think he was better than the way that they featured him last year and the way that they utilized him last year. This year they're giving him more stuff underneath. That's the way he was used at Alabama. I think we were saying this going into his rookie year. Like if they try and turn him into just like this Deshaun Jackson deep threat who's going to stretch the field on every play, he's not going to be worth much in fantasy because he's going to be so volatile. It's going to be like, oh, he might have an 80-yard touchdown in one game and then not get a target in the next game or whatever. And that's kind of how it played out. And of course he had an injury. I think, and this is something to remember with guys like Darius Toney or whoever, like injuries in your rookie preseason can completely derail your development. And I think it's very important to remember that with like guys that have had that happen this year and really struggle early on. Think about all the stuff that goes into being a rookie and how difficult it is to make that jump. When you add in the fact that you're hurt or coming back from an injury or missed time in training camp, fell down depth chart, and then now you're having to earn it and get past all these veteran guys. Like everybody else is getting paid too, you know what I mean? And so I just think that hurts so much. And so Ruggs getting hurt his rookie year. And of course, Bryan Edwards had the same situation. It's just really bad luck for them injury wise. That really can derail the development of a player, and it's already hard enough to be a rookie in the NFL and having that in there just makes it really hard. So all that said, I'm excited about what they can do. And it makes me very encouraged that in this past game, especially, they utilize Ruggs as like on screens, like quick slants, things like that, things that get him the ball in space, let him use his athleticism. Of course, he has the ability to take the top off defense, which he did. But I think, that's like definitely more suited for a skill set. And I think that's what they need to do. And I also think, and this is maybe just me putting sort of like the psychological angle on it, but like, you can't tell me that Gruden wants like people to continue talking about CeeDee Lamb and how they passed on CeeDee Lamb and Jerry Jeudy and stuff. It's like he wants to prove to all us assholes that his pick was right. So I think they're going to figure out as many ways to get him the ball as they can going forward. So obviously week 1 is discouraging because I think he only had like a couple targets. This last week was great. Hopefully they can build on this. Hopefully his confidence can build. Watching him, it kind of honestly felt like he was like pressing a little bit Ruggs, just because, there's so much pressure. You pick before CeeDee Lamb when it was like a surprise pick, everybody's making fun of it. It's like, these people are human beings. So anyways, good to see him have that success. I do think Bryan Edwards has potential. It kind of bummed me out that everyone was comparing him to like T.O. and like all this stuff in the preseason, because it's like, dude, now you're just making it like completely irresponsible, like comparisons. There's no way in hell he's ever going to live up to this. But I thought he's looked pretty solid. It was funny to see him like get 0 targets. And then like on the final drive of that game, the week 1 game, he's got like 3 targets and scored almost the game winner and stuff. So that probably helped a lot. But, I don't know if he's necessarily in the fantasy realm this year. He might be like a flex guy by the end of the season or something like that if you're looking for like a fill-in. But I think Ruggs has a chance to be like a wide receiver 3 just based on the fact that I think Gruden's going to try and get him involved.
Yeah, PFF's own Mike Renner had a great article go out this week talking about how Gruden has essentially followed the Chiefs' lead to rebuild the Raiders' offense around Carr, Waller, and Ruggs being his version. He's not saying they're equal, but just the Raiders, your lower middle class man's version, if you will, of Mahomes, Kelsey, and Tyreek. So I'm with you. I do think the draft capital plays a little bit of a role in Gruden's mind as well. And hey, man, like it wasn't like Ruggs just sucked last year when they threw him the ball. We just couldn't get over 5 targets. And I know targets are a little bit more of a factor of getting open and all that. But Danny, he's getting open so far this year. Let's hope the targets keep coming.
Yeah. I'm excited about it. See how it goes.
Everyone, if you're not following Danny Kelly on Twitter, I don't know what you're doing, but at Danny B. Kelly, you had your awesome, I'm assuming, weekly power rankings article go out this week. Again, people can hear you on the Ringer Fantasy Football Show. Anything else you want to get off your chest before we let you get out of here?
Man, no, I think you got it. I think you nailed it.
All right,
Super excited about Rondale Moore. I'm overly excited about Rondale Moore, I think is the problem. So yeah. Also, I've given up on my my Ronald Jones dreams. It's over.
Danny, I was trying to hide that, man. I didn't think you were going to. Well, you heard it from Danny Kelly.
Anyone who wants to know, yeah.
Guaranteeing a 1,500-yard Rondale Moore season. You heard it from the man himself. Thank you again, Danny, for the time. And thank you all for listening to PFF Fantasy Football Podcast. New shows out 6 days a week. We will be back on Friday with a DFS show and then Saturday with some injury updates. So thank you as always for tuning in. For Danny, I'm Ian. And until next time, take care, everybody.